In the middle of a romantic argument, before you even open your mouth to speak, your body makes a physical calculation. You might catch yourself leaning in toward your partner, or you might find your shoulder pulling back and turning away. That tiny movement represents two completely different biological responses to stress. One is a drive to close the distance and seek comfort. The other is a physical urge to secure space. You aren't actually deciding to do either of these things. Your rational adult brain is often bypassed in this split-second moment. This behavioral code was programmed into your nervous system during your very first year of life, long before you possessed the ability to speak. The friction we navigate as adults often follows a template formed in infancy, a set of reflexes we developed long before we had the words to explain them. To understand this code, psychologists rely on John Bowlby's attachment theory and Mary Ainsworth's clinical procedure called the strange situation. By observing infants in a controlled room, researchers established a clear baseline. They found that babies who were reliably comforted when they cried learned that seeking out closeness is an effective way to cope with distress. Infants whose cries were met inconsistently learned a different strategy. They adapted by either withdrawing completely or hiding their needs to avoid further distress. These infant behaviors were clear in a lab setting, but for years it remained unproven if these early classifications would actually persist into the complexities of adulthood. Childhood observations are largely theoretical until they can be shown to survive the changes and challenges of a human's entire life. That proof came from the University of Minnesota. Led by Alan Sroufe, the Minnesota Longitudinal Study of Risk and Adaptation tracked the exact same infants from those early tests for over 3 decades to solve the mystery. This chart tracks subjects from infancy to their 30s. The securely attached upper trajectory shows adults who were reliably comforted, seeking closeness during conflict. On the lower line, adults whose infant distress was inconsistently met interpret a partner's need for space as absolute rejection. Adult romantic behavior is measurably predicted by how an individual was responded to at 1 year old, even after accounting for 30 years of intervening life events. Today, many adults use clinical labels like anxiously attached or avoidantly attached as if they are fixed parts of their personality. However, attachment classifications from infancy are descriptions of patterns, not permanent medical diagnoses. They describe how we have learned to relate, not who we are. There is a danger in this framing. Using an avoidant label to justify withdrawing from a partner during conflict treats a description of a behavior as an excuse to avoid changing it. Treating a clinical description as an unchangeable identity makes it nearly impossible to address the behavioral patterns that the research actually identifies. Because this pattern was set before you could consciously influence it, your 20s are the first decade where you have both the self-awareness and the relationship stakes to deliberately revise your programming. Without this awareness, these early patterns tend to persist. By age 40, an unexamined attachment style is often the common factor when different relationships encounter the same recurring friction. To begin the rewrite, try a simple test. During your next conflict, identify and write down your first physical impulse to move toward or away before you act on it. Relationship agency means recognizing your oldest behavioral patterns and finally seizing the power to choose not to repeat them.